Hare Krishna. Welcome, welcome. It's been, I think, 2 weeks. I had a birthday week, and then last week as well. Oh man, I was so busy last week too. Oh, I passed my intermediate Bible course test. Had a fun birthday, but hey, finally made it. Lighting seems really strange here, and that made it better. Some dust on the camera. We are doing chapter 9, verse 29 through 31, the second to last verse cluster next week. I shouldn't be busy, and we'll finish chapter 9 next week. Happy Ekadasi. I'm running on fumes here, so I got a little tea to get my throat through this at least. But I don't feel totally lucid either, so hopefully I took good enough notes and can talk about some special, personal, deep things about Sri Krishna. Please join me or not in honoring and invoking the Supreme. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right, as usual, we'll begin with the literal translation of these verses by H.D. Goswami, 29 through 31. I am equal to all beings. I neither hate nor favor, but those who honor me with devotion are in me, and indeed I am in them. Even if one behave very badly, if one loves me exclusively, one is to be considered righteous, being rightly resolved. One quickly becomes a dharma soul and enters into lasting peace. O Konteya, declare that one devoted to me is not lost. Okay, pretty readable. Maybe some quick notes on this before we go on. I don't like the translation of very badly instead of abominable. That's the word Prabhupada used. And I had to look it up in the dictionary as I was taking my notes on this. Abominable doesn't actually mean very bad. Now, I don't know the Sanskrit word, so maybe H.D. Goswami's literal translation is closer to what it literally means. I'm not sure. But abominable means detestable. And so maybe it's bad or it's not bad, but you go, ugh, that's gross. You know, it's something that gives the reaction of others like that. And that is when you read the purport from Prabhupada, it's much more clear that that's, you know, what we're talking about here. But on the other hand, one thing that's a really lovely translation is one is to be considered righteous, being rightly resolved. So I don't think it's double entendre, but the that word right being duplicated there, righteous and rightly resolved, I think is perfect. I mean, it says exactly how this works. That's why we consider a devotee still a devotee, even if they fall down, because they're a devotee. So just by being a devotee and on the right path and constantly engaged, that's it. You're a sadhu. And because a sadhu is living in the material world, sometimes crazy things happen, and that's okay. But as long as they're constantly engaged, and that remains, then they remain being a devotee. They are still doing the right thing, so we still see them rightly. Maybe tea was a bad idea. I don't know. Oh, you know what it is? It's the air. As soon as I close my door, it gets so stuffy in here. I just want you to have a good background here. Oh, and yeah, I don't know what he means by Dharma soul. It's very different when Prabhupada talks about it. So that's it. Let's go back to Prabhupada. Here is verse 29. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Going through my notes here. So the first thing I thought was that word equal kind of brought to my attention the law of karma. And at the time, I didn't know if that was on purpose or not, like if Krishna wants us to see that connection there. And later, after reading the purport, Prabhupada mentions it as well at the end of the purport. So I think that is actually on purpose. But why is that? Why is that immediate thought there? It's part of the combination, jab, jab, hook. So it's a setup. So the punchline is, it's not karma, and it's not perfect equality. Krishna is good to everyone, but he is actually, in a sense, he is actually partial to his devotees, because they become friends. So, and once again, friend is a good translation. And there's another analogy Prabhupada uses here in the purport, but one example from my own life is, I have one student who's a Christian, and she's open about it. Her and me are the only people in the whole academy, including teachers, who are just open about our religion. I went to church 3 times Sunday. Like we don't care. We're not scared. We don't, this is part of who we are, and we just say it like it is. That being said, I don't wear a dhoti to school every day. Even if I liked it, dhotis, I probably wouldn't do that. Then again, I can't even imagine what kind of human being I would be to really like dhotis all the time. That's like very foreign to me. Though I do like a good lungi, and I have a few lungis here with me. But and I did wear that to school once, actually, for pajama day. But still, I'm not like, I don't actually like when people look at me like I'm weird. I'm not actually into that. It's interesting how that works, huh? So back to Prabhupada. Oh yeah, so I'm equal to all my students as best I can. When they do a good job, I say good job. But the girl who's religious, I'm a little bit nicer to her. But at the same time, she kind of deserves it too. So like when she speaks out of turn without raising her hand, but she has a very sweet voice and she's saying something very insightful and relevant, it's like, oh yeah. No, wait, you over there, stop. Wait, I'm listening to her now. Yep. So technically, when I'm doing that, I am sometimes breaking the rules because it's a hard rule in my class. You have to raise your hand if you want to talk, unless I'm explicitly saying, okay, anyone have an answer? Just shout it out. Sometimes I do that too. But hey, she earned it. She's a friend. And just in that way, a devotee is a friend to Krishna. There's a close relationship there. So Prabhupada says in the purport that concerning this apparent contradiction, right? So Krishna says, I'm equal to everyone, but also, if you're a devotee, I really like you, you're a friend. So there's an apparent contradiction. It's like he's equal to everyone and he's not partial, but he kind of is partial. How does that work? Well, Prabhupada just says it's natural. In the same way that someone may be charitable or generous to others, but at the same time, they have a special interest in their own child. It's just a totally natural thing. Now, another very practical aside here, one thing where parents fail at is because they are so partial to their own children that they put on really high demands, and the child ends up being like, oh man, I want to get away from here, and then they end up liking maybe their teacher more than their own parent, which I'm not saying I'm a fan of or not. It's just something that happens. There's a golden mean to everything. So, but that doesn't change the argument and the fact here and how it relates to this verse. The idea is still the same, that regardless of what you do with that special interest with your child, it's always going to be there. You're never going to look at other children the same way you look at your own children. And so devotees are kind of like Krishna's children. They're like, he's really looking at them. And literally, I mean, it's even more than that. Devotees are in him and he is in them inside. Not just looking at them, but like they're literally connected from the inside. Now, later on, there's another analogy of a diamond inside a golden ring, how they complement each other perfectly. The luster and the glitter, they just work together really well. So the devotee, the living entity, is like the gold. And then, so it's naturally nice and pretty. But when the gold has a space to fit the diamond, and then the diamond fits in, then it complements each other. It's a nice combination. But then, more importantly, Prabhupada provides. No, I already read that part. That word "provide" just threw me off a little bit. But this verse is also special because it provides philosophical grounding for personalism, as opposed to impersonalism, as philosophies and theologies go. Once again, very recurring theme throughout the Bhagavad Gita, and for good reason. This really is one of the special things about this text versus every other similar text. It's very personal. I think the New Testament, the gospel books, have some personalism in them too, but it's still, Jesus says, I'm the Son and you come to the Father through me. It's still, well, you got to be personal with me, and then you get a chance to be personal with God later, maybe. But Krishna says, oh no, I am the Father. Here I am. I'm right here. And I'm telling you exactly who I am, exactly how you can meet me, reach me, reciprocate with me. He's just laying it all down, laying down the law, just like a father would, just like a teacher does. Like, here are the rules. You follow these rules, you get +1. You disobey the rules, you get -1. It's the same deal. It's it's one way we show as masculine leaders. It's one way we show we care, is providing rules and a rigid framework. And at the same time, knowing, respecting privacy of others and freedom of others too. I like to be free. So I naturally lead in a way where my people are also as free as possible. But as free as possible means there are still rules. So, oh man, I really think the air is bad in here. That'll make it better. So, yeah, I can feel the draft coming in. Wow. Some bad air in here, I guess. Oof. Um, so what happens is the devotee finds the Lord, and then the Lord becomes the devotee of the devotee. Um, so this is, you know, transcendental relationship. And the Lord is still the Lord. It's not like he loses his power or status or something, but he's naturally reciprocating with us. Um, Once again, in the same way a father might um, serve the son. So sometimes the father would say, "Okay, son, take out the trash, do this thing." And the son might do a really good job and then say, "Daddy, can you help me with this?" And then the dad might just jump right away to his knees. "Of course I'll help you with this. I'd love to," even foregoing other duties just to help the son, you know. But that doesn't mean he's not the father. He's still the father, but there's that special and personal reciprocation there that must be there if you're going to actually have a personal, intimate, and sustainable relationship as a living entity, as I guess what you could call a mundane soul. That's a word I just made up now, with the supreme soul. That's a contradiction in terms, like sovereign citizen. Mundane soul. A soul is not mundane, but it is kind of marginal or part and parcel compared to the super soul, the supreme soul. And in the final paragraph, this is where Prabhupada mentions the law of karma. And the Lord's reciprocation should not be considered under the law of karma. It's a quote. This is a transcendental situation. Devotional service is not an activity of this material world. It is part of the spiritual world of Satchit Ananda. And so it is, Svaha, so it must be. On to verse 30. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. Properly situated. Actually, the Sanskrit is samyak vyavasitaha, completely situated. Completely. To me, that's even stronger than properly or rightly situated. Um, like togetherness, being linked, attached, viscerally. Sorry. So this is, of course, a famous verse that can be exploited by those who want to do sinful acts. And of course, we're going to hear Prabhupada saying how not to do that. That's at the very end as kind of a small footnote, like, obviously, yeah, don't do this. What are you, stupid? Like, come on. So in the literal translation, Krishna says Ananya Bhak, which means without deviation. So just so you know, the devotee we're talking about in this verse, we're not talking about a part-time devotee. We're talking about someone who is fully engaged, fully committed, and perhaps because they're fully committed, they should be considered like they're fully committed. And that's exactly what I was talking about with the literal translation of H.D. Goswami, that really made that clear in the verse itself, as opposed to Prabhupada, who also did a great job. I like both of them for this verse. But, Prabhupada set it up really nicely so that you'll just really want to read the purport, and then you go back and forth with the verse and the purport, and they both bounce off each other really well and support each other really well. In the first very long paragraph, Prabhupada talks about, okay, what are we talking about? So, and what does it mean, abominable act? So the words Prabhupada uses is an act that may be taken as abominable in a social or political context. So that's really important. And you have to take Prabhupada's word here as the authorized purport, as that is what Krishna is talking about as well. As opposed to like what many of us contemporary English readers hear the word abominable and we think of like a heinous violent crime or something like that. That's not what we're talking about here. It's seems evident that, well, it's explicitly clear that's what Prabhupada is not talking about. And because that's what Prabhupada's not talking about, we should philosophically and with faith take it that Krishna is also not talking about that. And Prabhupada does say in other time, not in the Gita, but in other time, morning walks and different things, he does say, what about, some devotee who does some horrible, like, raping children or some horrible thing. It's like, oh, they should be punished. They should be called out and definitely be punished and this and that. But then again, I'm myself starting to think, even in that situation, there's still compassion that can be there. Like, oh, this is a devotee who did horrible things, and we're gonna, punish him accordingly. Like an example is that was made famous by that series, Kirtananda Swami. What's his name? Keith something. They kept calling him Keith more and more, and a lot of devotees do this. They insist on using the non-devotee name. I'm not a big fan of that, actually. I think it shows too much attachment to something mundane, and I think it's better to show some compassion and respect, which also goes to Prabhupada, because Prabhupada initiated, under Lord Krishna's grace, initiated all these people. So, there's a way you can do it where you can say, yep, he did horrible things, and, we're filing lawsuit, blah, 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 whatever, charges, indictments, whatever. But his name's Kirtananda. He's in our family, but he needs to be punished and waken up and whatever. And he's going to get his own punishments anyway, also, because it's karma, and Krishna has his own plan for all this as well anyway. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. Now, so my note on this is that we maybe, looking at both translations, we maybe just don't have the right word to really translate Sudaracharo properly. But guess what? That's what Prabhupada admits in the very first sentence of the purport. Quote, the word suduracharo, used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly, unquote. So Prabhupada tells us explicitly, this is the word in Sanskrit. You can look at the literal translation. It's right there. Don't stop there. Follow me. Like, I'm going to tell you properly what it means. So we really want to cling to the purport here, to this particular purport especially. It's like very, very, very clear here. The purport may be even more important than the verse as it's translated by Prabhupada and or H.D. Goswami as well. So, and this is there's another common sense take on this verse, straight from Aristotle, from my ethos worldview, whatever you want to call it, religion, science, art. It's more of an art, I guess. A single action is not necessarily indicative of someone's character or the path that they're on. And Krishna is emphatically telling us that someone who is unflinchingly devoted must be considered a sadhu, regardless of temporary fall downs. So long as they're unflinchingly devoted, you must give them the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, that was just one single action. I'm stupid. I'm not understanding what happened here. Maybe the material nature has its own little thing that happened. It's a glitch. It's a hiccup. It's a glitch in the matrix, whatever. Like, Krishna's actually commanding us, actually, in this verse. That's the word Prabhupada uses emphatically, which is like a command, basically. Not a command from a superior officer, basically, but it is an imperative instruction. Do this, don't do that. It's not. This verse is not saying. That's not saying a lot of things. One, we're going to say in the next part here. Obviously, it's not telling us, oh, you can use this as a license to do sinful acts. No, it's not. Krishna's not telling us that. And Krishna's not telling us that, this is just a thing that happens and, you can expect it to happen a lot. No, Krishna's not saying that either. What else? And there's one more thing too that is not saying. He's constantly engaged in devotional service. Therefore, he's a pure devotee. Therefore, he did this one detestable act. Therefore, he's not actually a pure devotee. Oh, look, guess what? Oh, and then there's a whole problem with the whole pure devotion service at all. Oh, bhakti, there's some global problem with bhakti as well, and ISKCON, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's exactly why Krishna's commanding us, emphatically telling us, don't do it like that. Don't look at people in that sense. Don't look at devotees. Don't look at committed devotees in that light. It will cause trouble to you and to Krishna and to the devotees and to the society. It will certainly cause trouble. So do not do that. And then in the final paragraph, Prabhupada's very clear and also very quick and concise, where he says, quote, this verse only refers to an accident due to the strong power of material connections, unquote. And continuing, another really interesting thing, devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he's no longer subjected to such fall downs. And no one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that they're still a devotee. If one does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood that he is not a high devotee. Ethos Ananda, right there. You have to have both. For some people, it takes years. For some people, decades. For some people, months. For some people, moments. But whatever devotional service you're doing, it has to reflect in your character as well. And you don't need to do what I've done, where you do sadhanas and you do deliberate practice to improve your character that may or may not be related to bhakti. You don't have to do that. You can just do bhakti and your character will improve if you are a high devotee, if you are doing it properly. If you're doing devotional service for many years and your character is not improving, that means you have not improved. That is a problem on you. And that is a different class of person than the one we're talking about, who is unflinchingly, very enthusiastically committed like that. And again, it's still it's good to be compassionate, right? But the character has to improve. The person's character has to improve. There has to be some improvement in strength, resilience to Maya, whatever. As long as you're going on the up and up and you're maintaining the steady practice, that's great. That's what we're here to do. Next is verse 31. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. This is also emphatic. This is imperative here. Krishna is telling Arjuna to declare it. And he's telling us too, as the reader, please go forth, tell others. This is true. I declare it and you should too. And then Prabhupada says, this should not be misunderstood. Now, this verse is in fact a continuation of the previous verse. We're still talking about someone who does something abominable, but they continue practicing. They will quickly become righteous. So lasting dharma atma. So that was the word a dharma soul in the literal translation by H.D. Goswami. That's from this verse, dharma atma, which those two words together, Prabhupada just translates as righteous. But then also after that is shashvat shantim, lasting peace. So dharma atma, I guess it means kind of like the soul becomes one with dharma, or the soul is living in its dharma, and thus there is peace. A dharma soul, a righteous soul, an essential soul, a lawful soul. Interesting word combination there. Very interesting. So now Prabhupada is going to talk more. Well, he explicitly states the rhetorical question here, which we spoke about briefly in the last verse in purport. How can a person engaged in abominable activities, either by accident or intention, be a pure devotee? So Prabhupada says, basically, if a devotee is doing all 9 kinds of devotional service and putting Sri Krishna within their heart, all these sinful contaminations are naturally washed away. Now, normally, according to the Vedas and most religions, if one falls down from, especially from an exalted position as priest, pastor, guru, whatever, you'll have to undergo certain rituals to purify yourself, or you may be excommunicated, and that may be the purification in itself, knowing that if you want to come back, you'll have to earn your right to come back. What makes this Bhagavad Gita so unique is, and this particular bhakti, as this process of bhakti as it is given to us by Bhagavan, is that the purifying process is already there. If you've already come this far up through chapter 9, and you've been practicing along with Krishna and Arjuna everything we're talking about here, and Prabhupada in the purport as well with the Maha Mantra, if you're practicing constantly, that is the purifying process. You don't need to do some extra ritual process, ceremony, anything like that. So there's the that constant bhakti, typically through chanting Maha Mantra, but it's also purifying because the devotee is constantly remembering Krishna. And the basic thing here is that the solution to this problem is the same as the ongoing practice kind of before we had a problem, or during or after. It's all the same thing. It is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, continued without stoppage. This will protect the devotee from all accidental fall downs. He will thus remain perpetually free from all material contaminations. Thank you for your time. See you next time. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Bhagavan. Jai Shri Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis everywhere. Hare Bol.